Hello and welcome to another episode of Brass Roots, coming to you from the Yorkshire Areas Brass Band Association competition in Huddersfield. So we're here in Huddersfield in the heart of Yorkshire, and it's set to be a riot of competition with 4 divisions today all battling it out for their respective honours in each section. So we'll be following one band as they prepare and finalise the piece before going on to play for the all-important placing. It's going to be a great day, so stick with us as we bring you the highs, the lows, as well as some of the backstage action. So, Huddersfield. Now, if you've not been to this historic town, then let me tell you, it's got a few surprises up its northern sleeves and is notable for many things. Now, we've had the fortune to have a whistle-stop tour and we've put together a handy fold-up and pop-in-your-pocket guide to all things Huddersfield. Come on, keep up at the back. Huddersfield is literally the home of rugby league. The town invented the sport in 1895 in a dispute over payments to players. Now, the John Smith Stadium behind me is now the home to the Huddersfield Giants, who, interestingly enough, won all 4 rugby league cups in 1914. And no jokes about blokes without balls, please. Huddersfield's main export was textiles a very long time ago. Now, however, Huddersfield is a giant in the creative industries, with web design overtaking as the #1 export. Good news for all you tech heads and cyber wizards. Now, there are over 3,000 listed buildings in Huddersfield itself, the 3rd highest number in the country, and over 200 of them are based in the town centre itself. Now, the railway station is one of the most beautiful specimens dotted around, and there's been an inn on the side of the George Hotel for over 100 years. Now, Huddersfield is known for many things, but did you know that it hosts various music festivals, including the Huddersfield Contemporary Music Festival and the Festival Under the Stars, as well as, of course, the Yorkshire Areas competition, which is what we're here for today. In even more sports-related news, Huddersfield Town FC was the first English team to win the league 3 times in a row. Now, only Manchester United, Arsenal and Liverpool have since earned this achievement. That's quite some going. Did you know that Lord Harold Wilson, winner of 4 general elections, was born and raised in Huddersfield? Now, there's this lovely statue of him outside the train station and a pub named after him right in the town centre. Which of these you choose to visit is entirely up to you. So it's your choice, a pint or a picture. According to a UK census, Huddersfield is the 10th largest town in the UK, although this was debated last year as it was only ranked 14th. Now, at last count, there are 120,000 people living in the West Yorkshire town, a huge 30,000 of whom are students. Okay, so quiz time. So, talking of global and thinking universal, what's the link between Star Trek and Huddersfield? Well, it's the amazing and supremely famous Sir Patrick Stewart, who grew up just around the corner in a little town called Mirfield, until he boldly went and discovered new planets, well, Hollywood anyway, until very recently Patrick was also the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Huddersfield. So now seems like a good time to have a look around the amazing town hall. Okay, so let's show you around the town hall and just show you how this contest is put together, because it's actually quite complicated. Follow me. So first of all, we come into this magnificent corridor, and as you can see, it's got all of the plaques along the walls of former dignitaries that have kind of obviously held office within Huddersfield. So here is the contest control. Now, this is where all of the kind of admin's being done for the draws that are taking place today, and Peggy will be in that room, so we'll meet her later. Probably the most important part of the whole plan today is the catering department. So obviously, free bacon butties and cups of tea are plenty, and this thing, I'll tell you, this gets to see some serious work. And if we carry on further up, this is where the draw takes place. So welcome to the inner sanctum. This is normally the council chamber where very important meetings are made on a daily basis. But today, an even more important decision is being made as the draws for each section is being made here. And we've been given exclusive access. Aren't we lucky? Peggy, the contest controller, starts by shaking a bag of tokens for the draw. When a number is drawn, a representative of each band then pulls a ball to decide the order of play. There are 8 bands in the 4th section, and each is looking for a good place. Most would prefer somewhere in the middle. You don't want to be first or last.
Draw number 3. Draw number 1.
Peggy then recaps the draw to ensure all is correct and gives them all a much-needed piece of advice.
Barnsley Metropolitan 6, Dodders Colliery 8, Friendly Band 7, Garforth 3, Linthwaite 2, Loxley Silver 5, Maltby Miners 1, Thirdcroft Welfare 4. Okay? Have a good afternoon, everybody. Enjoy it. And suck it up. Okay.
And in here is the all-important reception, where the bands come in and make sure that they've got all their identification and everything is tickety-boo before they play. So you join us at a very important part of the whole process when bands come in. This is where they do their registration, and I'm joined by Margaret and Ruth. Hello, both.
Hello.
So first of all, I want to ask you sort of how important is the registration process?
So as I told my colleagues at work yesterday, I said it's a bit like passport control. We're very strict, although we're stricter than passport control. They all think I'm kidding, but we're not. But we do have a laugh, don't we, Margaret?
We do.
Yep, we do.
And I assume there's no internal searches needed?
Not at this point, no. I've not had to do any body searches yet.
You look primed. So tell me, what's the process when a band comes in? What do they have to do?
Well, they have to bring the registration cards in, and they've got to have the bandsman's ticket as well. So we check the card is in order, everything's all in order. Take the card off them, take the bandsman's ticket off them, and then they sit and wait and go on stage. And then when they come off stage, the registration cards and the bandsman's tickets are given back to them.
So what happens if they don't have a registration card?
They can't play. It's as simple
By
as that.
golly, you're strict.
Yeah. Well, yes, and if the registration card isn't in order, they can't play either.
What if the dog's chewed one corner?
Well, we might get away with that.
Depends what type of dog it is.
But certainly they must have a card and it must be up to date and correct.
And I've seen you furiously stamping. What's that for?
Well, we stamp every card to say which is the contest they've entered and the date they've entered the contest.
And where does...
You could take the card to another area contest. So if we stamped on there...
They're a scurrilous lot, these players, aren't they? So where does one get a registration card from?
From the brass band registry. We have, each band has a contest secretary who looks after the registration cards, makes sure they're in order. It's their responsibility to make sure they're correct before they come here.
So there's a lot of responsibility on the players to make sure they've got everything in place.
Yeah.
Okay, and so when they come in, what is your particular job?
So we normally check the numbers are directly with the numbers that we've got a sheet from our registry from. Make sure that number tally is up with the registration card. Take the bandsman's tickets off them, and also make sure the registration date, the expiry date, and the date they join the band, and that band that they're playing with is the band that's on the registration form, and their name is against that number. So that's why it's like passport control, really.
So do you ever get any ringers?
We've had a few dodgy ones in the past, but
Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah. Touch wood, Margaret. We've not had anything up to now, so it's all been fine this year. But as I say, it's like Margaret said, if someone's not on the sheet and then the band member decides to play on the on the stage, if that band was then come first or second or third or whatever, they could be disqualified because we have to check it all up with the registry. So.
Well, I think you've heard it here first. This is like the Berlin Gate. There's clearly security. You will not pass here unless you have all the registration in place. And Margaret and Ruth will be like Rottweilers, and they'll absolutely stop you in your paces, take your instrument off you, and kick you out. So thank you very much, ladies, for that wonderful insight, and good luck for the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we love Ruth and Margaret. As more bands prepare, we went to get more behind-the-scenes gossip. As part of another exclusive for you today, we're going to be interviewing inside the Mayor's Parlour, which is part of the inner sanctum of the Town Hall, but we've been allowed in today. And I'm joined by the adjudicators for today, and you're going to give us a chat into kind of what you do. So first of all, Sandy, tell me, what is your role?
Well, basically, we're here to judge the 8 bands in the 4th section, which is the lowest tier in banding, competitive banding. So we're here just to assess how they play Ray Steadman Allen's Stantonbury Festival Overture.
And as an adjudicator, it always struck me as kind of, is there anything particular that you're looking for, or is it just kind of let the music kind of play and then you make your decision from there?
It tends to be, it's the same sort of things you're looking for, whether it's 4th section or championship section, really. You're looking at, can the band play together? Are there dynamic interest? Is there something musical going on? What's the intonation and the tuning like? It's all, for a start, it's all very basic stuff, and especially at this level, some of those things are harder than others for the 4-section bands to handle. We'll certainly be looking for ensemble and dynamics and just making a good sound as a band. Things like intonation are a bit harder because you tend to have a wider range of players' abilities in the lower sections. At the top level, you have players all of sort of roughly the same ability. Down lower, you might have a mixture of real youngsters who might have only been playing for 6 months. Some old folk have been in banding for 40, 50, 60 years or come back to it after a break. So you're dealing with a different sort of set of players. So you are looking for slightly different things. But all in all, it's just the basics as normal.
Okay, and so when you're looking at these bands and you're kind of assessing them, kind of is there a set criteria that you work to, or do you kind of is it more subjective than that?
Well, I mean, I'm a member of the Adjudication Association of the Association of Band Adjudicators. So we've got our kind of performance assessment criteria. But the reality is, I think anyone who's doing adjudication or doing musical, like assessing musical performance, is thinking about similar things. I mean, just as Sandy says, you know, there are a range of different aspects to the performance that you want to really be listening out for. Things like, is the band in tune? Is it together? Is the balance there? Is there clear musical intent? You know, all these kind of things. But really, at the end of that, even though you're considering different constituent parts of the performance, you are kind of standing back and making a holistic overall assessment of the performance based on these different constituent parts. I mean, whilst it's important to consider them, at the end of the day, one of the key roles, I think, is sitting back and making an overall kind of judgment. One other thing I think that's really critical at all levels, but really in the 4th section as well, is to give some constructive feedback, in particular that the bands can take away and do something practical with. So I think it's always important to try and highlight something, a key bit of advice potentially that you could give to the bands to improve their general playing level or their general performance for the next time. And
I noticed when the draw was being done, then they mentioned that there's a youngest player. Now, the youngest player in this section was born in 2010, so you know, not even 10 years old. So I mean, in terms of clearly kind of judging that and ability and kind of experience with the instrument, that brings in a whole different kind of aspect of your adjudication, I should imagine.
It does, but because we're closed adjudication, we have no idea the age range or the makeup of the band or anything like that. So anything like the youngest player thing is obviously just whoever's been born the most recent, I suppose. We have no control over that. I think we have 2 prizes to do, the best instrumentalist and the best percussion. So those are 2 things that we'll just keep an eye on all the way through, and we'll just, you know, make a note as we go as to anyone that stands out, and then anyone who might usurp them as the draw proceeds.
And when it comes to making the decision, as it were, is there a set kind of criteria that you work to? Is the pointing system, for anybody that's unaware of kind of how this works, what is that process?
Well, I think as the day goes through, generally speaking, normally as we're assessing the bands, we're writing a critique, you know, kind of a detailed set of notes that go to the bands, kind of highlighting key things that we notice in the performances. Of course, you can't write down everything that you hear, but what you're doing is kind of picking up the main kind of things, giving a running commentary, really, as it were, about how the bands have done. In terms of how the bands are ranked and assessed, I'd imagine, you know, we'd have dialogue during the day discussing as you know, views on the performances, and really, of course, when you're working out a relative merit order, you know, at the end of the day, as each band plays, you're effectively slotting in how they've done against the other bands. You know, so you're coming up with a relative ranking towards the end of the day. I mean, it used to be the case back in the day that you'd have points that you'd award, but even this day and age, really, you know, in this contest there aren't points as such. You are really just establishing that order of merit.
Yeah, I mean, the way we do it is band number 1 plays, and then we don't have anything to sort of assess it against. Band number 2 plays, and we'll then discuss, do we have band number 2 first or band number 1 first? So is it 2-1 or 1-2? Yeah. And then we'll say, we'll agree on that. Then band number 3 will play, and then we'll assess what we've heard already, look at what we've written for band number 3, work out where we're going to slot them in. So we might end up, you know, 2-3-1 or 2-1-3 or whatever it is, and then we'll just keep a running order, and we'll just keep slotting bands in as we go. There's no other way of doing it. We've got to make sure that when band number 6 comes on, we already have the first 5 bands in an order that we both agree on. Otherwise, it's chaos.
Well, I don't envy them that job. A tricky decision to come, I think. As yet more bands head stageward for the big performance. Okay, so that's it for end of part 1 on Brass Roots. We'll see you in a minute. Welcome back to Brass Roots from Huddersfield and the magnificent Great Hall. Looks like things are hotting up. Coming up, we finally get to meet our band for today as they get in some last-minute rehearsal. Right, okay, so we've got our band for today, and we've got the musical director, is I think what we're esteemingly calling you. This is John. He's going to be conducting the band. So tell us kind of what your preparations are like before you go into a competition like this.
The band are still relatively inexperienced. There's a lot of people that have played over in different styles of music, or they've played for other bands before, but not necessarily at competition standard of any section. So there's a lot of variation in terms of the way you kind of approach different people and the preparation you do with them to make sure that they're happy with what we're walking into.
The band's been playing really, really well, and I think his aspirations are correct. I think they're great, so hopefully we'll do really well on the day. And
at the end of the day, the education is about how well I read the score and how well the players actually put down the music as to what the music says. So in terms of preparation, it's a case of going through the score and marking everything that I think is going to be required.
We've been together more as a band now. We haven't been together that long, really, when we played last year. Now we've had a lot more time to play together, understand one another's strengths and weaknesses, understand John as a MD better as well. And
tuning wise haven't been too bad, so there's not been lots of work to do, but with our standard of the section we're playing in, you're always going to get a little bit of issues there, but it's a case of working through with people to make sure that they're in the best place they can be, at least from what we're working on.
Make sure that you're really, really familiar with that music. You know where every bit's important, but where it's particularly important that you get that pitch right, that intonation correct.
So last year, it was the first competition I'd done. We went in very underprepared, if I'm honest with you. It was a very fresh, if you like, performance. I think we only had about 8 rehearsals on it because before Christmas we only had 11 registered players, so we didn't actually think we were going to be able to do it. We put the application in and thinking, well, if we go with 11 players, we go with 11 players. In the end, we ended up with a full band. But because of that, we were properly underprepared. This time, we've had a much more settled band.
Okay, so overall, I mean, if you were to kind of say where you think, well, if you could be first, do you think that could happen?
I think it could happen. I hope it does happen.
Well, listen, we're going to let you go because your band are going off, so we'll catch up with you later. Thanks very much indeed. Well, there you go. That was the lovely Naomi, and she's obviously going off with the band now to go and play and do their performance. We've spoken to John. He seems very confident. Seems confident that they could actually win this whole section. We'll wait to find out. So, Garforth Band. They were placed second last year and were desperate to go one better this year. They just played and by the looks of it seemed pretty pleased. 3 cheers for John, eh? Okay, so the band have just played, just come off stage, literally this second. I've got John with me. How do you feel it went?
Really well. A few blips here and there, tuning issues, the odd one, but as a performance, to put all 3 movements together, really pleased.
I think it went really well. John seems really pleased. You can tell when he's happy how a piece is going because he starts to dance around a little bit. And the more he relaxes and the more the band relaxes, I think, and enjoys the piece. So
You'd think I shouldn't be this size. If I was rehearsing more than once a week, I wouldn't be this size. I do tend to get a bit bouncy, but I as long as that doesn't affect my beat, it's not a problem. It's only I've been working hard this week to make sure it doesn't. But it's more the third movement's marked his skirts and out in places, and he's just trying to make sure that everyone could see as well as take from my beat what I wanted them to do.
And I assume everything that you wanted them to express through their instruments kind of happened the way you wanted it to? Yeah. I mean, there was in the little solo section, the first movement, there was a little bit of balance issue, but other than that, in the soloists weren't quite coming out as much as I would like them to do. But then they were playing to the dynamic marking that's on the page, so it's kind of that, again, down to that adjudication, that MD call as to what you want to happen. Naomi was a bit more brusque about it. She just went, I just wasn't loud enough.
yeah, apparently my solo wasn't loud enough.
It is the one thing I've said about the way she played, but it wasn't meant intentionally that was the rest of it was rubbish. As that was the case, the rest of it was really good. It was just the balance side of things.
And so we're not entirely sure when the results are going to be announced. So it could be an hour, a couple of hours. What do you do in that time?
I mean, we've obviously got to dive back, but it's just opportunity to just have a bit of a debrief with people in an environment that people feel.
Oh, the old debrief in a pub, at the classic. So, well, that prompts another question. What does a band do when you're waiting around for the result?
The pub.
John, we know what we're doing after this.
I think, we've got some of the members of the band that's why they do banding, or have in the past as to why that's why they've done banding. I've never really, I came from a kind of classical trumpet perspective rather than a kid growing up with brass bands. So I've never quite got that, but at the same time, I'm more than capable of going for a few drinks after a performance.
And so coming back to the most important thing, obviously, you mentioned before that you were fairly confident that you've had a second place. You think you could make that step up to first. How do you feel about that now?
It all depends on the other bands playing and on the adjudication given to the other bands.
So, after a swift libation in the Dog and Duck, it's a quick walk back to the hall, where, as you can see, it's filling up nicely. We're now absolutely in the centre of Huddersfield Town Hall in this magnificent venue here. The stage is just in front of me looking resplendent. The beautiful coving around the windows. The announcement's just about to happen. So obviously we're interested to see what happens with Garforth Band and whether they can get that all-important first place. The results are just about to be announced. Peggy takes the formalities and the guys representing Garforth are on stage with the other bands. And success for Garforth, as they are awarded the medal for the youngest player, who was only 8 years old. A great start. Oh, but disappointingly, Garforth were awarded third this year. Still a good performance, but I know the band will be a little down with that result. And it's Maltby that take the spoils this year in the 4th section. A tremendous win and a promotion to 3rd for next year. Okay, well, there you have it. There was the results right there. Some unexpected, some expected. So the band that we followed today, Garforth, came a fantastic 3rd, but I think John and Naomi and the rest of the band will be a little bit disappointed because they really were hoping for that 1st place. But got to say, congratulations to Maltby. Clearly a brilliant performance, and obviously merited the number 1 slot.
Disappointed with the result. The band still played well. I mean, if the other bands played better, they played better. It's contested. I worked out the point. I think unfortunately the other bands that did beat us are also the ones that were slightly ahead of us. So it'll be 4th section again next year. As long as I can keep the band together, I don't see a reason as to why when we're going up next year. So
it's still a place. So you mean you're still at the top of that group?
Yeah. Still. I mean, we beaten one of the bands that came down from 2nd section to 3rd section. Sorry, and another band that had been doing well in other competitions. We haven't got any competition experience, other than the Areas Nationals, that's all we've done. So that'll be something. Now we haven't. That's the one thing I found last year with having the Nationals to do. It made it really difficult then actually doing anything else. This year, that means that pressure will be off, and we'll look at what options we've got.
Wow, well, what a day we've had. It's been absolutely brilliant. We've been here for nigh on 7 or 8 hours now, and obviously we've been looking at what's been going on at the Yorkshire Brass Band Association. Got to thank everybody in Huddersfield Town Centre for making us feel incredibly welcome. Thank you to John and to Ruth and to Margaret, and of course to Peggy for letting us into the control room and seeing the draw as well. We hope you've enjoyed this 2nd edition of Brass Roots, and stay tuned to brasspass.tv for more episodes in the future. But for me, for now, goodbye.